So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Daily Grind. So, today, what we're going to be doing is actually reading the first book of the book series that this podcast is based on. But before we do, I wanted to discuss what the purpose of this podcast and not only its purpose, but how it's going to be implemented moving forward. And I would love to tell you that I was going to get started at 6:30 a.m. every day, but right now that level of consistency is going to be incredibly difficult considering many cases I'm having to work till 12:30 a.m. And so I apologize if you were waiting for the episode to start at 6:30 a.m. and we didn't get started till just now, but going forward, I will do my best to get started at 6:30 a.m. Like I say, sometimes that's not going to be possible. I will try to absolutely give an update within 30 minutes or so to let you know if it ever has to be moved for any reason to a different day. Also, one of the difficulties right now is when you're under a certain subscriber limit and you're just getting started out, YouTube does not allow you to operate from your phone. I have this set up for the live recording in a different location, and so I can't even access to set up or to change the times of the lives or to give you an update as of now. That would that would have been something that would have been a lot more efficient if I was able to let you know, 6:15 this morning that it was going to have to be moved back. So if you do get the opportunity and you're liking the show, to go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate that. If you turn on notifications as well, then it will notify you the next time that we go live or about future episodes, because there will be episodes of the podcast that go on in the evening where I've got a co-host named Dylan, and it should be a whole lot more fun. Like I said, I'll tell you a little bit about the method. I've kind of been briefly mentioning it in the past episodes of the podcast, but when I started out writing this book series, by the way, let me go ahead and tell you where it's found. Burdenofproof.co. If you type that in, it will take you to the shop page where both the first and second book of the series are available now. The first one is free. It'll be called The Flaw, and if you click it and click download, you have access to that one right now with no cost to yourself, and other than the time that you spend to give it a read. And I hope that you'll use that as test material. You're going to hear a lot of that first book today and tomorrow, and we'll get started on that shortly. But as I said, when I started out trying to write this book series, it wasn't a book series at all. It was a singular book. And it wasn't a fiction book, in fact. So what I wanted to do was to find truth. I wanted to show other people, but maybe even to show myself, that this was, in fact, a rational life. It wasn't just a bunch of meaningless chaos. I wanted to prove to others that there is a purpose to all of this, that what we do does matter. But what I realized as I was going along is that I was guilty of the very same process that I address as being a flaw in the very first book that I end up writing. So I actually did start writing it as that book that I was talking about, but somewhere maybe 15-20% into the book, somehow I stumbled upon turning it into a fiction story, which definitely never what I saw myself doing as being an author of a fiction story. But life has a unique way of taking turns that we didn't quite expect. And the flaw that I'm talking about is backward thinking. And as we go into the book, I think we'll get into talking about that a little bit more tomorrow, but maybe at the end of today. It just means that you start with what you believe is right instead of working your way up to the conclusion. So you start with the conclusion and then you make a claim based on the conclusion that you want, and then you take the evidence and you make sure that one way or another it fits, whether that means disregarding things that would overturn the conclusion. Um, we'll see more about what that term is in the book. We've discussed it in past episodes. Or and you could just call it an outlier, just pretend it's not really there. Um, and it definitely happens more regularly than people think. Also, you could take the evidence that does exist and create a whole bunch of logical leaps to make it sound as if somehow it agrees with you when the plain reading of the terms of the claim of the evidence clearly do not agree with you. But I want to point out that this isn't always malice. Sometimes we see it that way, when in reality, it's simply that we haven't developed the ability to properly rationalize and properly test because we just haven't developed those tools yet. No one ever really taught us to begin with. Now, if you want to hear more about this stuff that I'm talking about now, we will hear more about it as we go through the book. I don't want to take too much longer on that because it will kind of reveal itself, or we have a lot of this in past episodes. So I think that would be a great direction to go if you're looking for more material on this matter. Um, but as I was saying about how we're going to do this, how we're going to implement this moving forward. So, over these next 2 days, it's simply going to be reading the first book and kind of laying the groundwork for what we're going to start coming Monday. So, there's going to be an episode that airs at hopefully around 6:30 a.m., as I said, when I hopefully end up doing this as a job more permanently with the writing, with the podcast. I'll be able to stay to the 6:30 a.m. schedule strictly. For now, it's probably going to be a little more inconsistent. Hopefully 6:30 to 7 a.m. to get started in the morning on the morning episode of the podcast. But the morning episodes will be done Sunday through Friday. So Saturdays we're going to take a break. I desire to spend time with my family on Saturdays. I like to take one day to rest because sometimes we get so focused on the work in our lives, the careers, the goals, the aspirations that we miss out on the reason why we're doing it in the first place. And that is to appreciate, and this is regardless of beliefs, That is to appreciate the fruits of your labor, meaning the labor itself isn't, it can be some of the fruit that's produced, it can be some of the good and reason for doing it in the first place can be the result of accomplishing the task. But without rest, without time spent with family, with friends, it becomes pretty easy to burn out. And I would like to be able to do this for a long time. So I'm going to be taking Saturdays off. Now, on the Monday, Wednesday, let's see. No, on the Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday episodes, what we're going to be doing is introducing new steps of the methodological chain. So, the purpose of this chain is to seek truth, to search for clarity, as I say in many episodes of the Daily Grind. Uh, so, what we would do is we're going to start with the building blocks on which truth must be found, meaning all the tools that I've been discussing, or more like hypothesizing, exist, saying that there are tools that exist. We're going to try to show what those tools are starting next week. Episode 1 will air, or episode, I guess, let's see, what was that? Today is 5, so 7. Episode 7 will air on Sunday, and it will actually begin by talking about the first tool that we're going to use in the method as we go moving forward. But nothing can move forward without justification. And what I mean by justification, it has to be verified that this thing is true. So when I do episode 1 and I bring the tool and I present the argument and I give the explanation about why this is step 1 and why it's necessary and why it reveals truth, then people are going to get the opportunity to actually hop on live on Monday and to challenge the first step of the chain. Um, and as we go through this process, it's going to be a repetition of that cycle. So for episode 9 in that case, and I apologize if I get these wrong, I'll try to put up a schedule for next week by the end of the day tomorrow. But episode 9 would be law or rule number 2, tool number 2, however you want to phrase it. Um, the same will happen the day after that on Wednesday, is people will be given an opportunity to challenge every step. Thursday, another step, step 3 of the methodological chain. And on Friday, once again, people will get the opportunity to challenge each step of the methodological chain as we go along. And the reason being is because the goal of this podcast, the goal of this book series, is not for me to come on here and say that I've got it all figured out. The goal is to seek for truth. And most of us are so glued to the beliefs that we already have, we're unwilling to take a good look at them ourselves, much less to put them on display for others to attack and to try to dismantle. But if the ultimate goal is truth, then that's exactly what you would do. Why? Because say y'all were unable to prove a step wrong in this methodological chain, in this step process. Each step that gets proved is another solid step towards learning a new truth, right? Um, Not so much learning for us as a whole, but more of solidifying the lesson that's already being taught the day prior. But a part of this method is recognition that somebody can come along at a later point and challenge the method. That is what Monday nights are going to be for. So just because you are not here for episode 1 or 2 or 3, um, you're not here early on right now when I'm releasing these first episodes, when I'm showing the method for the first time. And so you won't be here, for example, um, next Monday to challenge the very first step of the chain. You will still have that opportunity, um, as much as time allows, on Monday nights at 6:30 p.m. Once again, right now the whole schedule thing is going to be incredibly difficult, but I'm going to do my best to be consistent with that. Um, my co-host should be here at least some of the Mondays, and we are going to address not only the specific claims or the specific steps that were learned that week, but we would be open and willing and excited, in fact, to discuss any prior step of the logical chain. So, what I mean is, on that next day's episode, the only thing that will be discussed, everything else will be outside of the scope of the discussion, other than that which pertains to the lesson or the step from the day before. But if you are looking at the overall and you came in, a month or two from now and you're wanting to challenge one of the first, 7 steps of the process, Monday night's going to be the time to do it. Um, and as I said, my reasoning for this is because the ultimate goal is to seek truth. And the truth will never fail under scrutiny. If the truth exists, scrutinizing it, if anything, will only prove that the truth exists even more rather than disproving anything. And so I hope that y'all will be tuning in for those episodes as we go through those steps, as we go through those tools, and as we test to find out if anything is actually true, and if so, what that is. So, as I was saying earlier, we're going to start with book 1, The Flaw, and we're just going to be reading through it. I'm kind of just going to discuss the different subject matter that can be pulled from this book and that we're going to see in a lot of the lessons on the podcast moving forward. So this one's called The Flaw. You can find it at burdenofproof.co. That will take you to the shop where you can download the verse book for free. So, prologue, coming home. The house looked smaller than Marcus remembered. He stood on the sidewalk with his duffel bag, staring at the faded blue siding and the porch that sagged slightly on the left side. 6 months ago, he'd sworn he'd never come back here. 6 months ago, he'd been convinced he had everything figured out. 6 months ago, he'd been an idiot. You gonna stand out there all day, or are you coming in? His father stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame and the other holding a mug of coffee. He didn't look angry. He didn't look disappointed. He looked there, steady. Marcus picked up his bag. His hands shook slightly. but not as bad as they had 2 weeks ago. Yeah, coming. The inside smelled like coffee and old wood, and something Marcus couldn't quite name. Stability, maybe. His dad gestured to the couch. You can sleep there tonight. We'll clear out the spare room tomorrow. Thanks. Marcus set the bag down. I, um, I appreciate you letting me. Don't. His dad held up his hand. You're my son. You needed to come home, and that's all there is to it. Marcus nodded. His throat felt tight. His dad sat in the recliner across from him, the same chair he'd sat in every evening for as long as Marcus could remember. So, you going back to school? If they'll take me, Marcus rubbed his face. I tanked pretty much everything last semester, academic probation. I'll have to reapply and prove that I'm serious. Are you? Serious? Yeah. Marcus looked at his hands. I don't know. I want to be. His dad took a sip of coffee. That's a start. The first 2 weeks were hell, not because his dad made it hard, but because Marcus's brain wouldn't shut up. One drink, just one, to take the edge off. You've earned it. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. sweating, convinced he could smell the whiskey, even though there wasn't even though there wasn't any in the house. His dad had cleared it all out before Marcus arrived. Never said a word about it, just did it. Marcus would lie on the couch, staring at the ceiling, counting breaths, trying to remember why he'd decided to quit in the first place. By the third week, the shaking stopped. By the fifth week, he could sleep through the night. And by the seventh week, he reapplied to the university. Software engineering. He'd been good at it once, before everything fell apart. Maybe he could be good at it again. By the 10th week, he got the acceptance letter. His dad didn't make a big deal out of it, just nodded and said, good. You'll need to leave by 7 if you're to make your morning classes. Marcus went back to school. 3 months in, life almost felt normal. He'd go to class, come home, do homework at the kitchen table while his dad watched the news. They didn't talk much, never had really, but the silence was comfortable, grounding. Marcus's grades were climbing, not perfect, but respectable. He was passing. He was sober. He was functional. You're doing good, son, his dad said one night out of nowhere. Marcus looked up from his laptop. Yeah? Yeah, his dad didn't look away from the TV. I'm proud of you. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Not break, just shift. Like a door opening. Thanks, Dad. His dad nodded as Marcus crossed the threshold, still caught up in the words. Words he couldn't remember ever hearing from his dad before. Chapter 1, The Call. Marcus was in data structures when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Professor Whitmore didn't tolerate interruptions. And Marcus couldn't afford to upset another professor. He'd worked too hard to get back into this seat. It buzzed again and again. Whitmore shot him a look. Marcus mouthed sorry and silenced it. But when class ended, he checked his phone. His stomach dropped. 5 missed calls. Dad. His dad never called, barely texted. If he called once, it was important. 5 times meant. Marcus called back. It rang twice. Then a woman's voice. Is this Marcus? Yes. Who is this? Where's my dad? This is Linda. I'm a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. Your father is here. What happened? He collapsed at home this morning. A neighbor found him and called 911. The doctors are with him now, but you should come as soon as you can. Marcus was already moving. Is he okay? What happened? The doctors will explain when you get here, Marcus. But Marcus, you should come soon. The drive took 20 minutes. It felt like hours. Marcus's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. His mind kept looping through the worst-case scenarios, trying to logic his way through the panic. He's fine. He's fine. People collapse all the time. Heat stroke, dehydration, low blood sugar. He's fine. But Linda's voice kept echoing. You should come soon. He parked crooked in the hospital lot and ran inside. They told him it was a stroke. Ischemic, left side of the brain. They'd gotten him in quickly. Clot busting drugs, the works, but the damage was done. He's stable, the doctor said. A young woman who looked exhausted. But strokes like this, there's often lasting effects: speech, mobility, cognitive function. We won't know the full extent for a few days. Marcus nodded. He didn't trust his voice. You can see him now. He's sedated, but he might be able to hear you. His dad looked small in the hospital bed. That was Marcus's first thought. His dad, who'd always seemed solid and movable, the one constant in Marcus's chaotic life, looked fragile under the white sheets and tangle of IV lines. Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed. His dad's eyes were closed. His breathing was steady but shallow. I'm sorry, for those of you watching YouTube, I'm disconnected on Facebook. Let's see. Well, hopefully it just reconnected there. I'll try to move back a little bit where we were in the story. Um, his dad looked small in the hospital bed. That was Marcus's first thought. His dad, who'd always seemed solid, immovable, the one constant in Marcus's chaotic life, looked fragile under the white sheets and tangle of IV lines. Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed. His dad's eyes were closed. His breathing was steady but shallow. Hey, Dad. Marcus's voice cracked. It's me. I'm here. No response. They said you're stable. That's good. That's that's really good. He didn't know what else to say, so he just sat there, holding his dad's hand, listening to the beep of the heart monitor. The next 3 days were a blur. His dad woke up on day 2 confused at first, then frustrated when he realized he couldn't move his right arm properly. His speech was slurred. He kept trying to talk, getting angrier each time the words wouldn't come. It's okay, Marcus kept saying. Take your time. They said this is normal, but it wasn't okay, and they both knew it. On day 3, his dad's speech improved slightly, enough to get the sentences out, even if they took effort. You should go to class, his dad said, the words slow and deliberate. I'm not leaving you here. Marcus, his dad's left hand, the one that still worked, gripped his arm. You work too hard. Don't throw it away. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm staying. His dad's jaw tightened. For a moment, Marcus saw the stubborn man he'd always known. Go to class. Come back after and remind there's something I should have told you a long time ago. Marcus wanted to argue, but he saw the look in his dad's eyes, the same look he'd had when Marcus showed up with the duffel bag 3 months ago. The look that said, trust me. Okay, Marcus said quietly. I'll go to class, but I'm coming back right after. His dad nodded, closed his eyes. Marcus squeezed his dad's hand and left. He never made it to class. He was halfway to the campus when his phone rang. Linda again. Marcus, you need to come back. Your father. I'm on my way. He turned the car around. By the time he got back, it was over. Another stroke, massive this time. They tried to save him, but Marcus stood in the hallway outside the room staring at the closed door. Linda was saying something, words about complications and risk factors and how sometimes these things happen. Marcus wasn't listening. His dad was dead. 3 days ago, everything was fine. Marcus had been going to class, doing homework at the kitchen table, rebuilding his life, and now his dad was gone. The funeral was small, a few coworkers from his dad's job, some neighbors, Marcus's aunt, who he barely knew. People kept saying things. He was a good man. He's in a better place. He'd be so proud of you. Marcus nodded, shook hands, said thank you. He didn't cry, couldn't. The tears were there, but somewhere deep. But they just wouldn't come. He just felt hollow. Behind him, two older veterans spoke quietly. One said, "Still wrong what they did to Frank. A dishonorable discharge after everything he did. Never set right with me." The other murmured something Marcus couldn't hear. The first man sighed. One mistake shouldn't erase a lifetime of service. Marcus froze, but couldn't bring himself to turn around. He couldn't process that now. Not today. After everyone left, Marcus stood alone in the cemetery. "I'm sorry," he said to the gravestone. "I'm sorry I didn't stay. I'm sorry I went back to the car. I'm sorry I—" His voice broke, but still no tears, just the hollow ache. Chapter 2, The Inheritance. The house felt different now. Marcus had been living in it for months, but now it was his house. The deed was in his name. The mortgage was paid off. His dad made sure of that years ago. Everything in it belonged to Marcus, and he hated it. Every room reminded him of his dad. The recliner in the living room, the coffee mug still sitting on the kitchen counter, the bedroom Marcus couldn't bring himself to go into. He slept on the couch like he had when he first moved back. It felt safer somehow, less permanent. He stopped going to class, not officially. He didn't withdraw, he just stopped showing up. He'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, think about getting up and going to campus, then he'd roll over and go back to sleep. The hollowness still wouldn't go away, and underneath it, growing louder every day, was the voice. One drink. Just one. You've earned it. Your dad just died. Nobody would blame you. Marcus would get up, pace the living room, sit back down, get up again. He didn't drink, but he wanted to. He was walking through the house one afternoon, not doing anything, just moving to keep from thinking when he heard it. Drip, drip, drip. He froze, followed the sound to the laundry room. Water was pooling behind the washing machine, a slow and steady leak from the wall. Marcus grabbed towels, soaked up the water, tried to see where it was coming from. The pipe looked fine, the connections were tight, but water was still seeping through somewhere. He mopped it up, threw towels in the dryer, and closed the door. "I'll deal with it later." But he didn't. Days passed, the leak kept dripping, the towels kept piling up, and then one morning, Marcus stepped into the laundry room and felt the floor slightly give under his foot. He knelt down, pressed his hand against the wood. Soft, spongy, water damage. He should call someone, a plumber, a contractor, someone who knew how to fix this, but that would mean talking to people, explaining, dealing with it. Instead, Marcus threw down more towels, closed the door, and went back to the couch. I'll deal with it later. 2 weeks later, he noticed the water spot on the ceiling in the hallway. Small at first, just a discoloration, easy to miss. But every day, it got bigger. Marcus would walk past it, see out of the corner of his eye, and keep moving. "I'll deal with it later." The voice in his head was getting louder now. "You can't even fix a leak. What makes you think you can fix anything? What's the point?" He'd lie on the couch at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the house pressing down on him, and under it all, the constant refrain. One drink. Just one. I'm going to take a sip of my drink and then we'll get started with chapter 3. We're probably going to get through about chapter 5 or 6 of this book today, and we'll um, go into the rest of the book tomorrow and kind of cover once again what the future podcasts are going to be like tomorrow as well for those who missed this episode. Chapter 3, The Collapse. 2 weeks after the funeral, the raw edge of grief had dulled just enough for Marcus to handle thinking about what he'd overheard. He was thinking back through what the veterans were saying. His dad never told him anything about a dishonorable discharge, and he had never known his dad to be dishonest. The silent type, sure, but Marcus would have never guessed that his dad would choose to willfully omit something that was such a big deal. What had happened, and what did it mean? Marcus was already having a hard enough time questioning himself, and now he was having to question his dad too. He began rummaging through drawers carelessly, not paying attention to the fallout, due to the overwhelming feeling of desperation. To know about his dad, to know about himself, to know what was true, to know anything true. As Marcus rushed down the hallway to check the living room, that's when it happened. He just stepped past the water spot, bigger now, brown and sagging, when he heard a sound like tearing fabric. He turned. The ceiling caved in. Plaster, insulation, and water crashed down in a violent rush, exploding all over the floor, exactly where he'd just been standing 2 seconds earlier. Marcus froze, staring at the wreckage. If he'd paused to inspect the spot, if he'd been one step slower, if he hadn't moved when he did, his legs gave out. He sat down hard on the hallway floor, still staring up at the gaping hole in the ceiling. And then, for the first time since the funeral, he started laughing. Not a joyful laugh, a hollow, broken sound, the kind that came out too sharp, hovering too close to crying. I can't even fix this house, Marcus said to the empty hallway. His dad would have known how to fix it. He stayed on the floor for a long time. The house was rotting from the inside. The laundry room floor was soft, the pipes were leaking, the ceiling had just caved in, and beneath it all, the foundation of his life felt just as cracked. He should call someone, a contractor, a plumber, anyone. He should do something. But the thought of dealing with any of it felt impossible. The house was broken, his life was broken, his mind was broken, and his thoughts kept circling back to one thing: the bar 3 blocks away. But as he stared at the broken ceiling, another image flashed across his mind. Winter morning air, and the kiddie pool in the backyard frozen over like a smooth mirror. He'd been 7. His dad handed him a hammer. Break it. Marcus remembered cracking the ice, watching the perfect reflection shatter into a mess of jagged fragments. What do you see now? His dad asked. It's broken. 10 minutes later, his dad called him back outside. He'd refilled the pool with the water that had frozen thinly again. The reflection was whole. Nothing, his dad said, is too shattered that it can't be restored. Then came another memory, sitting on the edge of the bed, flicking paper footballs across the desk with his dad. Every game ended with them writing the score on the football and dropping it into a Ziploc bag. They never opened the bags again. Winning wasn't the point. The time together was. And then one more memory rose, so clear it hurt. He was 14. They were closing up the garage after fixing a loose hinge. His dad leaned on the workbench, catching his breath. You're going to hear a lot of people tell you what to believe, he said. So test things, test everything. But when you find out what's true, hold fast to it. He didn't think much of the words at the time, but now they were the only words that could even hold a candle to the repetition of one drink. Just one drink that continued to be louder and more pervasive than any other thought. But then he rose up the memory, but then rose up the memory that he tried the hardest to bury, the fight. Now, before I wanted to go into the fight, I just wanted to point out this quote here. Um, Test everything, but when you find out what's true, hold fast to it. And if there is one tagline, one thing that's more important than any other line in the entire series, it's all based on that building block right there. That the truth is available, it's accessible, and when you find it, hold fast to it. Not in such a way that you're unwilling to test it anymore, but in such a way that you know that it's worth testing, it's worth believing, it's worth holding. And so we'll go ahead and continue for now. I just wanted to point that phrase out here. The fight. His dad warning him about his drinking. Marcus denying everything. The shouting. Marcus storming out with his backpack. His dad looked so pale at the time. Marcus thought to himself, how did I not see it? If you don't want to help, then go. His dad hadn't meant it. But Marcus left anyway. Marcus got to his feet slowly. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He went into the kitchen and opened the cabinet where his dad used to keep the whiskey. Empty. Of course it was empty. His dad had cleared it all out before Marcus came home. But the bar was 3 blocks away, and Marcus was tired. Tired of trying, tired of holding things together, tired of pretending the weight wasn't crushing him. He walked out the front door without locking it, stepped off the porch, turned left 3 blocks. His hands shook harder with every step. His chest felt tight, his vision blurred, though he couldn't tell if it was sweat or tears. He wasn't thinking about the hole in the ceiling anymore, or the soft floor in the laundry room, or school, or even his dad. Just one thought pressing harder than all the rest. One drink. He walked faster, 2 blocks now. Just one drink, that's all. Just one to quiet the noise, one to stop the ache, one to make it bearable. 1 block. The neon sign glowed ahead. His heart was pounding. His hands were trembling violently. I don't care anymore. I just want this to stop. Half a block, and then impact. Chapter 4, Staring at the End. Or Starting at the End. Marcus sat on the floor of the hallway. By the way, for those who want to know, that part is going to be reconnected a little bit later on. But for now, we are going to go back to the moment of the hallway. Marcus sat on the floor of the hallway, staring at the hole in the ceiling. Plaster dust covered his clothes. Water dripped from the exposed beams, and somewhere in his mind, a question was forming. One he couldn't ignore anymore. How did I get here? Not the hallway, not the house, but here. This moment where everything he'd built had fallen apart. He thought about the leak behind the washing machine. He'd seen it, known it was a problem, and done nothing. Then the water spot on the ceiling, walked past it every day, watched it grow, still did nothing. And now this. The ceiling had caved in because he'd ignored the signs until it was too late. But the house wasn't the real problem, was it? Marcus stood slowly, walked back to the living room, and sat on the couch. The same couch where he'd spent the last 3 months rebuilding his life. Or thinking he had. He pulled out his phone. His hands were still shaking, but not as badly now. The urge to walk to the bar was still there, gnawing at him, but something else had broken through. A realization. I've been doing this my whole life. Not with houses, with everything. He'd ignored the signs that his drinking was a problem until he flunked out of school, ignored the warning signs in his relationships until people left, ignored his dad's quiet concerns until it was too late to say the things that mattered. And now he was going to do it again. Walk to that bar, ignore every reason he'd gotten sober, and pretend it would somehow fix the emptiness in his chest. Marcus leaned back against the couch. I can't fix the house if I don't understand what's broken. And I can't fix myself if I don't understand how I got here. He thought about his dad, about the things they'd never talked about, the beliefs Marcus had inherited without ever questioning them, the assumptions he's built his life on. What if all of it? What if the drinking, the failures, the chaos? What if it wasn't just bad luck or weakness? What if the way he thought about things had been broken from the very start? Marcus opened his laptop. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he knew he needed to understand something, anything about how thinking was supposed to work. Because right now, his thinking had led him to a hole in the ceiling and a near walk to the bar. And that wasn't working. 3 hours later, Marcus had fallen down a rabbit hole. It was started with a simple search. How do people make decisions? That led to articles about cognitive biases, which led to philosophy, which led to logic, which led to epistemology, a word he'd never heard before but suddenly felt crucial. How do we know what we know? He'd always assumed knowledge was straightforward. You learned things, you believed them, that was it. But the more he read, the more he realized most people, including him, worked backwards. They started with a conclusion, then found reasons to support it. Marcus thought about his drinking, how many times he'd decided he deserved a drink and then spent the next hour justifying why one wouldn't hurt. How many times he'd convinced himself he wasn't an alcoholic because he could stop whenever he wanted, even as he kept not stopping. He'd started with the conclusion, I don't have a problem, then bent every piece of evidence to fit. Marcus kept reading. The article that stopped him was titled, Why Smart People Believe False Things. He clicked it. People almost always begin their thinking backwards. They start with a conclusion. My religion is true. My political party is right. My parents were trustworthy. The experts know this worldview explains everything. Then work in reverse, trying to justify it. Marcus read that line 3 times. My parents were trustworthy. He thought about his dad, about the things he'd believed his dad, that he'd believed because his dad believed it, and about the assumptions he'd inherited. His dad had been a good man, steady, reliable, but did that mean everything he taught Marcus was true? Or had his dad also inherited beliefs he'd never questioned? Marcus kept reading. It's like walking into a courtroom as both judge and jury, already having decided the verdict before hearing the case. That hit hard, because that's exactly what Marcus had done with everything. He decided he wasn't an alcoholic, ignored the pieces of evidence that said otherwise. He decided he was fine, ignored the panic attacks, the isolation, the fact that he couldn't function without a drink. He decided his dad would be okay, then refused to consider that a stroke could be fatal. Backward thinking. Start with the answer, ignore everything that doesn't fit. Marcus closed his laptop. He looked at the hole in the ceiling, then at his shaking hands, then at the door, the one he'd almost walked through an hour ago. I've been thinking backward my entire life, and if he wanted to rebuild, really rebuild, not just to patch things over, he'd have to learn to think forward. Start with the question, follow the evidence, and accept whatever answer came, even if it wasn't the one he wanted. Marcus stood up. The bar was still 3 blocks away. The weight in his chest was still there. His hands were still shaking, but for the first time in weeks, he wasn't thinking about drinking. He was thinking about the house he'd inherited. Not the one with the leaking roof, but the mental house, the one built from beliefs he'd never examined. And he realized something. I need to tear this down to the foundation. All right, so we're going to do just one more chapter today, and then I'll go through the rest of the book tomorrow. Maybe have a little bit of a brief discussion at the end, but we'll see how it goes. So, chapter 5, How We Learned Without Learning. Marcus spent the next 2 days reading, not for class. He'd already missed too many lectures to catch up easily. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was understanding how he got here. He kept coming back to the same realization. I learned to believe before I learned to think. As a kid, he'd absorbed everything. His parents said it, so it must be true. His teachers said it, so he believed it. The TV said it. The book said it. His friends said it. And Marcus never questioned any of it. He thought about the first time he tried alcohol, 16 years old, party at Jake's house. Everyone was drinking. Someone handed him a beer and said, "It's not a big deal, everyone does it." So he drank it, not because he'd evaluated the claim, not because he thought about consequences, but because the people around him, people he trusted, said it was normal. Trust comes first. Evaluation comes later, if it comes at all. Marcus had read that line yesterday, and it stuck with him, because evaluation hadn't come, not for years. He trusted that drinking was socially fine, then that drinking alone was fine, then that drinking every night was fine, then that drinking before class was fine. Each time he'd absorbed the belief from someone else or from himself, rationalizing, and never stopping to examine it. You learn to believe before you learn to think. Marcus sat back on the couch. He thought about his dad, about the things he'd believed because his dad believed them. Work hard, don't complain. Keep your head down. Men don't cry. Faith is private. Were those things true? Or had his dad inherited them from his dad, who'd inherited them from his dad, going back generations? None of them ever stopping to ask, wait, is this actually true? Marcus didn't know. And that scared him, because if beliefs could be inherited like furniture in a house, passed down without inspection, how many of his beliefs were actually his? How many were just echoes of the people who'd never questioned them either? He kept reading. One article broke it down with examples. A child sits in church and learns that God is real. Another child sits at a dinner table and learned that God is a myth. Neither child evaluated the claim. Both absorbed it from trusted voices. Years later, both will defend their positions as if they reasoned their way there. Marcus thought about church. He'd gone as a kid, not every week, but enough. His mom had been religious, quietly in the way people are when they don't talk about it too much, but still pray before meals. After she died, they stopped going. But Marcus had absorbed something, a vague sense that God existed. That prayer mattered, that good people went to heaven. Had he ever examined those beliefs? No. He just carried them like furniture he'd inherited and never looked at it closely enough to notice the termite damage. A child hears one parent say, "Conservatives are destroying America." Another child hears a different parent say, "Liberals are destroying America." Neither child understands policy, economics, or history, but both understand tone. Contempt is contagious. By the time those children can vote, the tribal lines are already drawn. The other side isn't just wrong, they're the enemy. Marcus winced. He'd done that too. Not with politics. He'd never cared enough about politics to have strong opinions, but with everything else. Jocks versus nerds, drinkers versus straight-edge kids, people who got it versus people who didn't. He'd absorbed those divisions without ever asking if they were real. And now, sitting here in the house that was literally falling apart, Marcus realized something. I don't know what I actually believe. I only know what I've been taught to believe. And those two things weren't the same. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, the intact part, not the hole, and he tried to list the things he believed. I believe, he paused. What did he believe? I believe my dad was a good man. Okay, that one felt solid. But was it a belief or a fact? His dad had been good to him, but did that mean that his dad had been good in every way, had never made mistakes, had never hurt anyone? Marcus didn't know. I believe I'm an alcoholic. He paused again. Did he believe that? Or had he just been told that enough times by counselors, by his dad, by people at meetings, that he just accepted it? What even was an alcoholic? Someone who drank too much? Someone who couldn't stop? Someone whose life fell apart because of drinking? By those definitions, yeah, he was an alcoholic. But had he ever examined the claim? Or had he just absorbed it? I believe he stopped. He didn't know how to finish that sentence, because every belief he tried to name felt shaky, like furniture he'd inherited but never tested to see if it could hold the weight. Marcus sat up. If I don't know what I believe, then I don't know who I am. And that thought was more terrifying than the hole in the ceiling, more terrifying than the bar 3 blocks away, more terrifying than the grief sitting in his chest like a stone, because if he didn't know what he believed, really believed, not just inherited, then he didn't know how to rebuild. And rebuilding was the only option left. So once again, that's from book 1, The Flaw of the Burden of Proof series, which you can get for free now at burdenofproof.co. It'll take you to the shop. The second book is available as well if you're looking to get a little bit ahead, but it'll be a while before we access that material. When I was writing this book, a lot of the intent was to show this process of what I had been going through, whilst a lot of the narrative itself isn't absolutely true. Some of it is. And it shows a real life application of how the method itself was developed, and it shows the moment in our life a lot of times where we come to this recognition, because most of us don't stop to think about what actually is true, what we really do believe, until a moment that stops us in our tracks. Maybe it's a moment of gaining some profound wisdom that we had never seen before. It could be a beautiful moment. That's not what it was for me. And I don't think that's what it is for most people. Most people, it's a moment where everything difficult in your life seems to collide at the same time, and there's this collapse of the illusion that you've built, the illusion of the identity of who you are, the illusion that you've got things under control, the illusion that you actually have a firm hold on the truth that other people don't have, and it just collides into reality, and all of a sudden you recognize that you're sitting in the floor, looking up at a hole in the ceiling, recognizing that you never knew or even tested to see if what you had learned, see if what you had been taught and inherited was even true in the first place. Now, the circumstances may be different in your life, But I think it's likely that if you've begun this journey of trying to actually find what is true, that you've had a moment exactly like this type of moment. Because that's when it becomes necessary. If not, you're just spiraling. That's what Marcus was doing. And that's what I was doing when I came to that moment in my life. And I felt exactly like him, completely frozen, broken, unable to even choose a direction, much less to walk in it, to take steps towards it. And while that may seem irrational in hindsight, in the moment, I'm not even sure I was capable. Sometimes we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up for where we were in a prior moment. But that's not helping us to improve in this one or the ones to come. So rather than spending all that time focusing on what you didn't know, I want to encourage you to start now, to start today in this moment, moving forward, to focus on what you can know, what is potentially knowable, what is worth knowing in the first place, and to start to test everything and hold fast to what is true. Even if you don't come back and watch it on this podcast, even if you don't read these books, my hope for you is that you start to recognize that the truth isn't just kind of valuable. It's not an optional part of life that could produce something good. It's vital to understanding reality and purpose, if such a thing exists, and what is worth knowing more than that. And if it turns out that there is no purpose, then wouldn't you want to know that too? So that you don't endlessly waste time pursuing something that never actually amounts to anything of substance, of lasting value. So, either way, exploring this, either way, testing everything, it's worth your time. And that's why I am really hoping that I will see you tomorrow, somewhere around 6:30 a.m., 6:30 to 7 a.m. in the morning, for the next episode of The Daily Grind. I appreciate y'all joining me. Until next time, test everything and hold fast to what is true.